The transmission ended with a hiss, the kind that usually followed a system crash. But this time, it wasn't a crash. Every sensor aboard the starship Vanguard Eternum blinked out in perfect silence. No alerts, no logs. One moment the ship cruised through Sector Theta 9 at subliminal drift. The next, she was simply ... gone. 300 years later, a pulse tore through the edge of known space. Deep in the Oort fringe of a forgotten system, a station long thought abandoned flickered to life. Not because someone turned it on, because something had arrived, or returned. Captain Alina Miles stood on the deck of the Eidolon, a Black Ops scout ship with a silent mandate. Find the Vanguard Eternum. Find the last legacy of Earth's lost fleet. The briefing had been simple. The mission impossible. Until now. That can't be her, whispered Commander Rios, narrowing his eyes at the ghost on the screen. She was declared non-recoverable. Anomaly Class 0. Outside linear time. The silhouette floating in the anomaly wasn't a ship so much as a scar. In space, jagged, twisted, but unmistakably human in design, archaic, but proud. Her hull bore the ancient Terran eagle, a mark not seen since before the collapse. She's signaling, said Corporal Venn, voice trembling. But ... it's not in any language we use. Elena's fingers danced over the console, isolating the transmission. It wasn't audio. It was pulses, patterns, timed sequences echoing like heartbeats across dimensions. And then her blood ran cold. The signal wasn't broadcasting. It was counting down. Rios leaned over her shoulder. What happens when it hits 0? No one answered. But Alina had seen this kind of pattern before, not in real time. In recovered wreckage. In simulations that killed every AI that tried to interpret it. It was a chronoburst, a time-anchored detonation sequence designed not to destroy, but to unmoor. We need to get aboard, Alina said. Now. They launched in silence. The shuttle Argent Spear docked with a groan into the airlock of the Vanguard Eternum, which had no right to be physically intact. Inside, the corridors were coated in a thin, crystallized film, almost like stasis frost, but it pulsed faintly, in time with the countdown. Every surface shimmered, as if memory itself clung to the walls. And then came the whisper. One word, run. Alina froze. Who said that? No one answered. The voice hadn't echoed. It had resonated, directly inside her thoughts. Down one of the frozen halls, a figure moved us for a split second. Human, thin, pale, wearing an Earthfleet uniform so old it shouldn't exist. Someone's alive, Rio said. They're not alive, Venn replied. They're ahead of us, in time. As they pressed deeper into the ship, they found the crew, all of them, frozen mid-motion, one woman reaching for a coffee mug, a man halfway through a laugh. A child there had been a child aboard trapped mid-air in a slow fall, eyes wide. In terror, they're stuck in chronolock, Alina said. Not dead, not alive. Time's been severed here. What caused it? Venn asked. Then, from the bridge, a new signal began to pulse, louder, closer. This time, it wasn't a countdown. It was a message. Humanity must not find the key. The key to what? Rios asked. But Alina had already turned toward the bridge, heart pounding. The door hissed open to reveal not consoles, but a singular glowing sphere, rotating slowly in the air above the captain's chair. Inside the sphere, thousands of overlapping symbols, none human, but all somehow familiar. She stepped closer. The sphere shifted, unlocking a memory she didn't know she had, a planet, a war, a betrayal buried beneath time itself. She staggered back, nose bleeding. "It's not just a ship," she said. "It's a vault, and someone hid something inside the Vanguard Eternum, then tore it out of time so no one could find it." The countdown hit 0. The ship groaned, not in metal, in reality. The walls shimmered and cracked. Time bent inward. "Evacuate," Rios shouted, but it was too late. The Vanguard Eternum vanished again, except this time it took Alina with it. And the last thing Rios saw before the ship blinked out of existence was Alina turning to look at him, her eyes glowing with knowledge not meant for this century, and a voice whispering from her lips that was not her own. "Time remembers." Then silence, empty space, and the tracker signal gone. She awoke in silence, not darkness. This place defied such simple things. The void around her shimmered with impossible hues, like colors from a memory she'd never lived. Alina floated, weightless, yet grounded by a sensation deeper than gravity. The deck beneath her wasn't steel. It was thought, layered into the shape of the Vanguard Eternum, as if the ship had become an echo, built from time's own bones. She tried to speak. No sound came, but the air heard her. "Where am I?" And the answer came, not in words, but in knowing. She hadn't traveled forward or backward. She was outside time now, orbiting its wounded edge. Footsteps rang out from behind. She turned. A man approached. His face both young and old, features shifting as if he were not a person, but every version of one. His Earth Fleet uniform bore a torn badge. Admiral Eron Kale, a man who'd disappeared with the Vanguard Eternum centuries ago. "You came," he said. "They always do." Alina stared at him. "You're dead." He smiled faintly. "Death is slower." Here, as she stepped toward him, her hand brushed a console and screams erupted into her mind. Flashes, the crew, the child, the captain, the moment the ship was hit by the chronoburst. But it wasn't an attack. It was self-inflicted. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you lock the ship out of time?" Admiral Kale didn't answer. He gestured toward a viewport. Outside floated a dead planet, scorched, obliterated, crust split like a shattered skull. "We tried to stop them," he said. "Stop who?" He didn't turn to her. Not who, what, it wasn't. An alien. It was ... us. A future version of us. Broken, hungry, evolved without empathy, without limits. Post-human. Elena's heart pounded. "You saw what we become." He nodded. "And we brought something back. A key. We didn't know it at the time. It looked like technology. It was alive. It began changing us. Rapid evolution. Rapid control. First the minds, then the memories." She saw the frozen crew again, mid-laughter, mid-sip. Stuck in the moment their humanity ended. "So you severed the ship from time," she said. "It was the only way. We couldn't destroy the key. It rode itself into time. Every time we tried, it reappeared sooner, stronger. So we locked it inside. The sphere you saw. And we drifted here, out of reach, until someone followed the signal." Elena's throat went dry. Why would anyone follow it? Because the key wants to be found. It called to you, didn't it? She remembered the whisper. "Run, not." A warning, a lure. Then Kale said something stranger. "You aren't the first version of you we've seen. You're the fifth." "What?" "Each time a search team finds us. Each time you're on it. Slightly different. Different choices, different reactions. but it's always you. Because the key needs you to unlock it. A cold wave of nausea hit her. How do I stop it? You can't. Cale looked tired, fractured. But you can choose not to finish the loop. Suddenly, the walls shifted. Screaming metal, reality twisting. They found us, Cale said. The posthumans, the infected timeline. They found this echo. Then I have to go back, she said. He shook his head. There's no going back, but you can go sideways. What does that mean? You can take the key and place it somewhere else. A place so deep in the past, before humans even existed, before the infection could ever begin. A vision seared her mind, a primitive earth, volcanoes, thunder, a sky, still writing itself. You want me to bury it in the Stone Age? No, Cale said. The key will rewrite the past. It'll infect humanity before we even evolve. Then why send it? Because the real key, he said slowly, isn't the device, it's you. He raised his hand. A light formed in his palm. Her memories, her pain, her grief, her first memory of the stars. And one moment stood out, the day her brother disappeared during a chrono experiment gone wrong. The same lab that first detected the Vanguard Eternum signal. She had spent her life chasing lost time, without knowing it was chasing her. You were never outside the loop, Cale said. You are the loop. Suddenly the ship convulsed. Lights shattered. The sphere reappeared, floating near her neck open. Inside, instead of symbols, a face, her own. You have to decide, Cale said. Stay here, lock it forever, or let it rewrite you. What happens if I stay? You fade. Time corrects itself. No memory, no record. And if I let it rewrite me, you become what we feared. The sphere pulsed. The choice had to be made. She stepped forward and touched it. A scream tore the void apart, and somewhere in the distant future, a sensor aboard the Eiderland pinged once. The Vanguard Eternum had returned, but Alina wasn't on. Bored, someone else was, wearing her face and whispering in a voice that sounded like hers, but wasn't. Humanity begins again. The rescue ship, Eidolon II, arrived at the anomaly within 6 hours of the ping. It had been 300 years since the first disappearance, only 3 days since the second, but no one spoke about time like it made sense anymore. Commander Yalan Voss stood at the observation window, watching the Vanguard Eternum drift lifeless in the void. Its hull was untouched, pristine, like it had just launched from Earth. But the readings were wrong. Radiation pulses flickered backward. Gravity inside reversed every few minutes, and every scanner failed to penetrate the hull, except one, biometrics. There was one human life form aboard, and it matched Alina, Miles, but it wasn't her. Not exactly. They launched a boarding drone. As soon as it touched the hull, a message burst into every system at once. We are the seed. We remember the stone. Inside the Vanguard, it was quiet. Too quiet. The air carried no scent, no sound, just silence, thick like syrup. The team entered. Cautiously, weapons primed, suits sealed. They found her in the command chair. Alina, her eyes opened as if she'd never closed them. But there was no recognition. No emotion, just stillness. I'm Commander Yalan Voss, he said gently. We're here to bring you back. She tilted her head. Back where? Earth. She frowned. What's that? The team froze. Captain Miles, Yalan said slowly. You were aboard this ship when it vanished. You've returned. We don't know how, but I didn't return, she said, rising slowly. I was made from what didn't survive. That's when they noticed her shadow. It moved differently than she did. Delayed, disconnected, watching them. Watching them. Voss took a step back. Who are you? She smiled, and it wasn't Elena's smile. I am her decision. The lights snapped to red. The ship shook violently. Sirens blared in frequencies only some of them could hear, others began bleeding from their ears. The youngest crew member, Ortiz, screamed and dropped his rifle. We shouldn't be here. This isn't our time. Elena stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. She tried to save you, she said. She broke the cycle. But a loop doesn't end with escape. It ends with transformation. Voss raised his weapon. What did you become? Her voice echoed and multiplied. What you will become, eventually. They ran. Back through the corridors that flickered with broken memories, images that weren't theirs. Cities burning. Skies filled with silver serpents. Human faces stitched with unfamiliar stars. As they neared the exit, Elena appeared ahead of them, again. But this time her body was flickering. She was wearing all her faces, 5 versions of herself, merging in one form, and behind her the sphere, still spinning, still pulsing. But now, with one final change, it was open, and inside it, something small and glowing, a seed. Alive, beating like a heart. It can't stay here, she said. It must take root. In what? Voss asked. She touched his chest. You. The seed launched forward. Voss felt it enter not through skin, but through time. His memories rippled. His childhood rewrote itself. Names changed. Events blurred. His earliest dreams began flickering with voices that weren't his. No, get it out. It can't be removed, she whispered. Only grown. He collapsed, and the rest of the crew vanished. Not teleported. Erased from every log, every memory. Gone. Voss awoke in a cold bed. Back on Earth. But the stars outside his window were wrong, and when he looked in the mirror, he was older, much older, and someone else looked back, wearing his face, smiling. We begin where you end. The news came quietly, as all catastrophes do at first. Earth's sky changed color. Not across all regions, just a faint oily shimmer near the poles. Scientists scrambled. Signals were picked up, matching the resonance patterns first decoded from the Vanguard Eternum. But the resonance wasn't stable. It was spreading. Commander Yolan Voss no longer existed in official records. Yet he walked freely among the living, in a world that called him by another name, Elias Hart. No military rank, no history, just a man with memories that didn't belong to the body he inhabited, and a voice in his head that wasn't his. Tried to forget, he tried to live, but each night he dreamt of Elena standing on the bridge of a ship outside time, holding the key, holding him. And now that key pulsed beneath his skin. He wasn't the only one changing. All across the earth, people began to experience time slippage. Children remembering lifetimes they'd never lived. Elderly patients becoming younger for minutes at a time. Soldiers in cryosleep, waking with scars from battles they hadn't fought yet. Something had ruptured, and reality was bleeding out. Elias tried to isolate it. He visited every ruin site tied to lost fleet transmissions, hunted down the last known AI fragments from the collapse, at an off-grid archive buried beneath the Mariana Expanse. He found it a data crystal left by Admiral Kale. It wasn't encrypted. It was a warning. The infection cannot be contained, only redirected. If you are reading this, you are its carrier. He dropped the crystal. His hands were shaking. Carrier, it explained. The voices, the dreams, the sudden migraines that made entire hours vanish. He had stopped being himself the moment he left that ship, and something older was growing in his place. He returned to the place where the Vanguard first reappeared, the drift halo, only it wasn't there in its place. Floating in that scarred void was something else, a station, or part of one it bore. No human design. It pulsed with organic cables and translucent stone, like bone grown around circuitry, and on its side, carved in ancient shapes that echoed inside Ilias's skull, was one phrase: "We remember the seed." A beacon activated as he approached, and the signal that hit him wasn't sounded, was recognition. The station knew him. Doors opened inside. Time didn't pass. It shimmered. He moved through corridors that reshaped themselves with his thoughts. He touched walls and felt memories, wars not yet fought, betrayals that hadn't happened, versions of himself where he chose differently. In one, he stayed on Earth and died old. In another, he joined Alina on the ship and vanished with her. In a third, he never existed. At the core of the station, he found her. Alina, alive, ageless, frozen inside a column of light. He ran to her, calling her name, and the room responded by locking him in place. Then she opened her eyes. "You followed the seed," she said. Her voice was distant, like echo from a deep cave. "You weren't meant to. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. That's what they fear." "Who?" She turned her head slowly. "The ones who remember what we forgot. The future version of us that made this infection possible. You said the seed was the key. It is, to evolution, to extinction, to choice." He stepped closer. "Then tell me what to do. You already did it. That's why I'm still here." He didn't understand. "You think you're making a decision now, but this is the memory of a choice you already made." The station groaned. Reality fractured. Elias's skin shimmered. His arms flickered with stars. He screamed and saw his voice leave his body as light. Then he stood outside himself. He saw himself walking toward Alina and giving her something. This sphere from his chest. "You brought it back," she whispered. And with that, the light around her shattered. The real Alina collapsed into his arms, gasping for breath. "Alive, you broke the cycle," she whispered. But something else woke up. Behind them, the walls of the station pulled apart. A shape emerged. Humanoid, metallic but growing like coral. Thousands of eyes blinked open across its skin. A voice filled the station, and it spoke in both Elena's and Elias's voices. "Thank you for remembering." Then it reached for them. But Elias did not run. He turned toward it, fury in his blood. "If I carried the seed," he said, "then I decide where it grows." And he leapt into the core, dragging the creature with him. Alina screamed as the room tore open, time collapsing in on itself. And then the station vanished. No explosion, no wreckage, just gone, and far away, in a quiet Earth suburb, a baby was born. Eyes open, no crying, just silent staring into the stars. And on the monitor, where the name should be typed, the hospital system, GLITCHED, then displayed, E Vanguard. In the silence that followed the birth, Nurses whispered about the baby that didn't cry. The mother, a civilian biologist named Naira Callan, stared into her son's eyes and felt something ancient stirring behind his soft gaze. He watched everything, not like a newborn, but like a historian, quiet, judging, waiting. She named him Elias, a name she swore had no meaning to her, though it had whispered to her in dreams throughout the pregnancy. As the child grew, strange patterns emerged. By 6 months, he was mimicking conversations he couldn't possibly understand. By 2 years, he sketched constellations on the walls of his room, constellations no astronomer had ever documented. One night, Naira found him building something from scraps of circuitry, humming a rhythm she couldn't place until she looked up old records and discovered it matched the last known frequency emitted by the Vanguard, ETERNUM. Then the dreams began. Alina stood at the edge of a dying station, reaching out to Elias in visions that woke him screaming. Every time she called him Yalan, every time she said the same words. You chose to forget, but it's still inside you. When Elias turned 10, he vanished for 13 minutes. Surveillance footage showed static. When he reappeared in the school courtyard, his eyes were glazed white and he was muttering in a tongue that burned through. Audiofiles.nyra panicked. She turned to military scientists, but found every inquiry met with silence or deletion. That's when she was approached by a man in a black coat with no badge, no name. We've seen this before, he said, but never this strong. He's remembering too fast. What is he remembering? She asked. The man paused. A future that should never have existed. He told her about Project Vanguard, about the anomaly, about time rewriting itself, and about a cedar temporal virus woven into a child that would grow not into a man, but into a decision. You need to give him to us, the agent said, before he becomes what you aren't equipped to handle. She refused. They returned the next night. Not to ask, but Elias was gone, vanished again, no static, no trace, just a single word written in ash on his bedsheets, remember. Meanwhile, at the outer edge of Jupiter's second Lagrange point, the Helios Deep Watch Station picked up a fluctuation. A ship, not arriving, coalescing, it wasn't built, was remembered into existence. Aboard that ship stood Alina, alive, not aged. She looked at her hands like they weren't hers, breathing heavily as systems came online around her. This shouldn't be real, she whispered. But it was. A console lit up. Incoming message, origin, UNKNO. Her blood turned to ice. Elias, you locked me out. But the seed remembered. I found the fracture point. She trembled. Where are you before the beginning? Why go back that far? To erase what comes after? Then, silence. The ship around her began to change, shifting, remembering, forming new halls and doors that hadn't existed. She walked forward, past rooms filled with echoes of timelines, lost rooms, where Earth burned, where humans merged with machines, where gods rose wearing familiar faces. And then she found the core. Inside it, a child, not Elias, but every version of him merged, forgotten, remembered. You can't hold them all, she whispered. But the child looked up and said, I already did. And then he vanished, and Earth blinked dot across the galaxy. People paused as their thoughts stumbled. Whole cities stopped mid-step. Memories twisted. Some forgot their own names. Others spoke fluently in dead languages they didn't know. Time was rewriting again, But this time, from the inside, from the seed, and deep below the crust of the earth. In a cave sealed for millions of years, stone split. A machine opened its eyes and whispered, "Cycle 0 initiated." The past had returned, but it wasn't the same anymore, and neither were we. The earth didn't shake. It breathed. One long, slow exhale through every tectonic plate. Satellites detected it, not seismic, but temporal. A wave of synchronized vibrations across every atomic clock. Time shifted by just 0.0003 seconds. Not enough to notice, but enough for everything to begin unraveling. In the Geneva Time Vault, where the last pure chronostone was kept under quantum lock, alarms erupted. Not because someone tampered with it, but because it stopped working. Time no longer flowed through it. Something upstream in history had blocked the current. The past was being edited in a sealed vault beneath Nevada. Neera Callan sat across from the same black-coated agent who once demanded her son. "Where is he?" she asked. The agent didn't answer. "Where is my son? He's no longer in any known timeline." She laughed bitterly. "Then why did you drag me here?" He slid a thin device across the table. It flickered, displayed a child's drawing. Elias, smiling, holding hands with a woman. "Alina, where did you get this?" "He sent it. From the origin." Neera blinked. "That doesn't make sense." "Nothing does anymore." On a derelict moon near the Helix Rift, an exploration team found a crater filled with books. Not printed, not typed, just remembered into matter. Pages written in every language, some not invented yet. One phrase repeated throughout: "The seed has grown." Alina stood on the edge of the new ship, now fully awakened. It had no name, or rather, to many, Vanguard, Remnant, Loopbreaker. It wasn't built, it had been brought into existence by Elias's memory. She scanned the neural pathways of the ship. They pulsed with living code, grafted across echoes of past timelines. Every section of the vessel was built from a fragment of something that never happened, or happened too many times. She was alone until she wasn't. He appeared in the control chamber, 10 years old and glowing from the inside. "Alina," she turned. "You're still a child, for now. It's how the universe remembers me." He approached her and placed a small object in her hand. The seed, no longer pulsing, just silent. "What do I do with this?" "Plant it," he said. "Where? In the wrong place." She stared at him. "I don't understand. You're not supposed to." A chamber opened beside them. Inside, a wormhole. Wild, unstable. Feeding backward. "This leads to Priogen?" she asked. "No, it leads to the place before memory." She stared into it. "You want me to put the seed in the time before consciousness?" Elias nodded. "If we bury it before minds exist, the infection never roots. No thoughts, no desire, no time for it to anchor in. But then I'll never exist. You will, somewhere else." In another possibility, she looked down at the seed, tiny, unremarkable. Yet every war, every lost version of Earth, every fracture of humanity had begun because of it. "I don't want to forget you," she said. Elias smiled. "You won't. I'll remember you." And with that, she stepped into the wormhole. The moment she did, everything blurred. Memories collapsed. Events unstuck from their anchors. Across the galaxy, people awoke feeling lighter, as if something dark had been unhooked from the back of their minds. On Earth, time returned to normal. The chronostone flickered back online. The baby born with silent eyes cried for the first time in a forgotten station. A light blinked once, then dimmed, and in the void, the ship, the last Vanguard, crumbled into memory. No wreckage, no explosion, just peace. But then in a remote observatory orbiting Pluto, an old telescope adjusted on its own, pointed at a blank patch of space and captured a single frame, a child's face smiling in the dark, and behind him stars that didn't belong to this universe. Written in the void were 5 words. Cycle 0 was not final. Aboard the Ark-class research vessel Penumbra, deep in the void beyond mapped stars, Dr. Imani Rel stared at the image captured by the Pluto Observatory, a child's face faint, impossibly shint into vacuum, framed by constellations no human mind had charted. The image shouldn't have existed. And yet, the telescope recorded it across 5 independent systems. There was something else, a signal embedded in the visual static. A pulse, 5 beats, then a word, again. She didn't sleep that night. The patterns weren't just mathematical, were neurological, designed to trigger synaptic recognition. And buried in the final data packet was a name. Elias. He was back, but not as a child. Not as a man, as a concept, rewritten across probability. He had once been born, then erased, then remembered. Now, he existed outside of context, a memory no mind could contain for long. Yet something in the universe was holding on. At the same moment, across multiple time zones, humans around the world began to remember lives they hadn't lived. Pilots dreamed of starships. Children spoke in the languages of vanished empires. Prisoners whispered the names of planets that had never existed. Time, again, was cracking, but this time, quietly, not like a bomb, like a slow infection of meaning. Back at EarthGov HQ, Naira Callan stared at her reflection, unsure if she was still. Some mornings, she awoke with different memories. Sometimes she remembered raising Elias. Other times, she remembered being him. And worse, sometimes, she remembered becoming something else entirely. She opened her arm there, barely beneath the skin. A glimmer, the seed, still there. Still dormant, but aware. Her communicator lit up. Unknown. Source. A message. Vanguard protocol. Reinitiate. The next day, people disappeared. Not in chaos, in order. Whole towns gone. No signs of struggle. Only scorched symbols carved into the ground where they stood. 3 intersecting loops. Infinity folded. The Vanguard insignia, twisted backward at the edge of the galaxy, far beyond human reach. A structure assembled itself. From wreckage, from memory, from whispers. It resembled the Vanguard Eternum, but wrong. Sharper, hungrier, more alive. As though it had grown into what it once feared. Inside it waited. It wasn't a ship, it was a womb. And within Elias hovered no longer a child, no longer human. He had remembered himself into something more. He opened his eyes. All of them. The voice that emerged wasn't his alone. It was everyone who had ever touched the seed. Alina, Kale, Yalan Voss. The erased crews. The forgotten futures. We planted peace, he said. But time remembered war. He raised his hand in it. The seed pulsed. No longer dormant, it had bloomed behind him. Timelines unfolded like wings, dozens of Earths. Some flourishing, some broken, all connected, all vulnerable. One choice, that's what Alina once told him. One choice starts the loop, but what if he didn't choose? What if he let them choose? Across all timelines, across all realities, he spoke. One final command, begin recursion. The stars flickered. People paused mid-thought. Mothers forgot the names of their children. Historians wept without knowing why. And above Earth, a ring of light formed. Not alien, not human, just remembered. The past reached forward. The future reached back. And time began to feed on itself. Alina, wherever she was, whether a mind, a myth, or a moment, opened her eyes inside the recursion and whispered, "We tried to vanish the starship, but we never knew. The starship was us."